I think, James, you kind of ran it, so I don't know if you want to kind of just
Well,
refresh everybody, or.
I think what we said is we were going to come back and sort of discuss and see if we have any feedback on the fifth grade standards, and then were we scheduled to meet with the other group of 10?
I don't know what
I think
time
it
it
was
is.
We had proposed it, but I don't know if anyone heard back from the high school group.
I think that would be Marilyn. Anybody heard that? She was.
I
the one
think
that
she
sent-
said they did not wanna meet before lunch for sure,
Okay.
Okay.
but it might be an emissary running down there and getting.
Let me see that.
I
They're on the
think,
first
I
floor.
think they're on the first floor.
Yes.
So then, and then I think we said our next goal was to jump into the fourth grade standards, and I don't remember who it was, but someone has gone through the fourth grade, kind of like we started with, to put all the Massachusetts, California, and Missouri standards on the board under our headings. So we have that in Dropbox to look at.
I would like to suggest maybe instead of going to fourth grade, going to kindergarten and coming up, now that we kinda know where our ceiling is at fifth grade.
Where we ended, now work towards that end.
Yeah, cause I'm afraid we're gonna start pushing stuff down and kindergarten doesn't need any more stuff in it. I'd rather see us pushing the other direction, maybe into sixth grade, if
So
we
now we
need
have
to.
the end in sight, let's see.
That's kinda what I was thinking, I don't know, but
Well, I was thinking that too, and we had talked about that, I think, in one of our very first times here, that we wanted fifth grade done, so we had an end in sight, and then go K up. Because I know when I did the third grade domains and put that out there with fractions, that was all shoved down into third grade once, in like with Missouri, Massachusetts, there were no fractions in third grade until we got the Common Core. California had one thing of fractions in it. But so it was all shoved down to third grade. So like what, as we work down, I think we're gonna end up, I think we need to see, now that we know our end in sight, where do we need to be by fifth grade?
I'm fine with going to kindergarten. I'll admit that I did drop the ball in first grade and having to put the other standards in place of the homework assignment that I was volunteered to do. So if we go kindergarten, then we go to first grade. I'll just say that I didn't get it done in first grade.
And I
but
think
if we meet with the other group, we probably won't get past kindergarten.
we probably won't
So,
either.
but I will have it done for next time.
No, it's all good, it's all good. Because I think by the time we get through kindergarten, we're like thinking what kindergartners really need to do, and then if we meet with 6-12, we're gonna revisit fifth grade anyway to make sure. I did meet with my team of fifth graders, but that meeting, all I did was bring it to their attention. It's kind of bad timing because by the time I gave them the rough draft of what we did here, I need some suggestions, this is where we're headed, I think we're on the right track. Well, the whole next week we had quarterly assessments, we have grading, we have this, I did not hear back, so I'm hoping, I just told them if I could have feedback by November 7th, it was my goal, because I was not to be the one to put anything extra on their plate, that was not my intention. So I was like, and I'm a fifth grade teacher too, and I did not need anything extra on my plate, so I just told them November 7th. The only thing, I chuckled because the example of the input output, well, that's not a good example. I go, we already know that. We're putting something different in there. So
It was just a picture.
It was just a
to
picture,
remind
and that's
us
what
to
I
do
told them.
something.
and I told them that. I said, it's all good. This is just, so we had a visual of what actually needed to be in there is why that's there. So, but.
Yeah, it was the first one I found on Google Images.
So I told them not to worry, don't stress about the visual that we already have, but.
So
Did
we,
anybody get feedback on fifth grade? Do you think it's important to share now, or do we want to just go ahead and jump to the kindergarten?
I actually got feedback from third and fourth grade, and some of that was feedback that they felt there was things at that level that needed to be moved up, either to fourth or fifth. So, just throwing that out there, I don't know. And
Was it something we'd already put in fifth grade?
no, it wasn't, honestly, most of it came from the fourth grade level, that they felt like it needed to be at a fifth grade level, and there was some of the third grade stuff that they felt needed to be at the late fourth grade level. And I haven't had time to meet with my kindergarten first and second teachers yet either on that, on their end of it. But, just throwing that out there.
Well, we can start there. Can we start there?
start with.
just see where what they think needs to be in fifth grade that we might not have put in fifth grade.
Well, I mean,
Or do we need to just wait till we hit fourth grade?
Yeah, I'd say we need to.
I was gonna suggest go ahead and start at kindergarten, and then let's try to bring that discussion back to the next discussion where other people had more opportunity to speak with others.
I mean, it may be that once we get to those levels that,
It
I
Maybe
can
moving
present
them
that and
anyway.
they
would be adjusted.
we can say, okay, well, felt like that this needs to be moved up or whatever too. So,
Because I just noticed a few of that too, just by writing out third grade definitions.
Right. One of the things that I was wondering, do we know if the rest of the group has been taught to the other 4 members that haven't ever been there?
You mean they've been appointed yet?
Appointed, made notification of? I was just wondering if we had any knowledge of that yet.
Haven't heard anything.
Also, are we going to write a report today?
We are, yeah, I have a template. I'd like to do that actually before we go to lunch, kind of stop maybe 30 minutes before we decide to go to lunch. I was sent, well, I think you all, the template, so I thought we could work that out as a group. I think Audrey's checking, I think it needs to be sent in today, the hearing is on the 20, they're presenting it on the 27th. So, we do have that. To get completed.
Yeah, so by the time we do that, kindergarten, don't
We're
worry
good,
about
we'll
it. Don't
get-
worry about first grade.
Okay,
We're
first
all
grade.
good. It's just
I was
like
gonna-
it's just like teaching. Everything always plays in. You never quite get done what you
I was gonna stay up late last night working. I was like, wait, we're going 4th grade now. We'll never get to 1st grade tomorrow. So anyway.
I just did third grade last night, thinking it wouldn't matter if I got it done or not because where we go kindergarten or fourth, we're never gonna get it.
So was there anything in the 5th grade work that you guys finished up that we needed to go back and revisit?
I think we're waiting to hear something.
There were a few things that I had some concern with, and not necessarily the content of it, but the wording of it. Some of it was exactly the wording that was in the Common Core standards, and I wanted to make sure that if we're gonna leave that in there, that if there was any way possible to put that into different words. Just going from, I know the copyright ideas and issues have been floating around, just to keep us away from that stuff. I think we've all agreed, or most of us agree that, not all the Common Core the standards are necessarily a bad thing. And if we like part of them, we can use them, we just need to put them in our own words so that we're not copying and pasting and plagiarizing in some way, shape, or form. So there were a few things that I did notice that we just specifically took it from here and put it over here.
So what you're saying, if there's a concept to be
If
taught,
there's a
at certain
concept,
grade
yeah.
level, we need to put it in our own words.
Yes.
Do you have an example of that? Do we need to go through those
Let
and
me-
highlight those and then go back and? Anybody else have a problem with their Dropbox?
Yes.
Are you on the drop, using the Dropbox or the Google Drive? 'Cause those could be-
Dropbox. It just keeps going through.
Okay, the very first one, on number 1, under represent and analyze patterns and relationships, the part that's highlighted in yellow. There, so is that,
So what is that? Course, it's minutes. It's, if we need to put it in the words. Yeah, the changes.
and the comments are
And then we did have a discussion starting with K-5.
After fifth grade.
Okay. Did you have any other feedback from K-5, Marcus?
No, it's not an exact.
It's not exactly
No.
what the end is.
No, because we added and compare and a common starting point.
think the wordsmithing, I mean, that's something we've kind of talked about. We're gonna go back through and do later anyway on all of it. I think we could just start on kindergarten and then,
Because I think some of the wordsmithing will come into play, especially after we talk to sixth grade and really what their expectations are coming into sixth grade. And I know where he's coming from too, but we did change up some of that, but I think some of that wordsmithing we fix, and we have to see what sixth grade really wants us to have. What do they need to be ready for coming into sixth grade, and that's where some of that wordsmithing is gonna have to change anyway, so.
Show it to your fifth grade teachers too, maybe they could see.
And they may have some suggestion, yeah, and I won't have that back until November 7th, but I handed it out to the whole team. And what was nice is that a lot of those teachers were, I mean, they're young, it's a lot of new fifth grade teachers, so, but it's nice to have that input, not just, I got my good share, there's about 4 of us that have, veterans, and then there's a good chunk of brand new fifth grade, so it's gonna be a good mix of thoughts coming right out of college and being there for 20 years, so, it's a good mix.
so then is everyone okay with going to start on kindergarten now? And then we'll come back to some of these things as we have that discussion later?
My, and I haven't, like Leslie shared with a lot of teachers, a few teachers and a few coordinators within my district, and they're worried about the fraction piece, but I told them, again, we had all kinds of highlights in that area because we need to look at what sixth grade has, and then also when we get third and fourth in place, that'll make fifth grade make more sense. So we'll come back to that.
Are they worried that you need more in fifth grade or less?
No, that we've dropped some of the rigor and some of the details, which we talked about the math practices, and I reassured them it's still a work in progress. So we're still gonna, and that area did have the most highlights. It's like we may have lost some of our steam at the very end there, but, and they understand that completely. So yeah, I think that we'll be fine there.
I think we got to the point where our goal was to get a grade kind of
Mhm.
drafted,
So we
something rough, yeah. Did you happen to talk to anybody from downstairs about meeting today, Marilyn?
No, that's Ann. Sorry about that. No, I saw Kathy Battles a while back, and she said she read our minutes and they agreed for us to meet, but I don't know if we have a time yet. Okay, so
Nobody
last
else
time
is
we were here, we talked about right away, but then we thought maybe getting into our work first. That would have been, we can go back in the minutes, but I thought we said 9 o'clock. But I'm just wondering if maybe it would be better for us to go ahead and start with kindergarten and maybe meet closer to 11 when Ann is here. I don't know, that would be our whole group then. Or we could go talk to them at 11 and then go to lunch after that.
I thought I'd seen an email from Kathy that said not before noon.
Oh,
I don't know, do we need to send, I think we need to send
Send
somebody
them an
down and
email.
just ask, or send an email, something.
Maybe see if we can-
I'm not sure, it seemed like they had something they were trying to get done, this, I don't know.
So not before.
It's been a while since I saw it, so I apologize for not being more.
Yeah, maybe if we just send them a message and tell them that the fifth grade stuff's in Dropbox and they can take a look at it. And then this afternoon, maybe we can go down and talk to them about it.
And I got every grade level but maybe first grade James, did you?
I-
And I didn't check the drive to see.
No, I admitted earlier that I dropped the ball on that.
Oh, okay,
So I-
okay, so I didn't lose an email or something.
I thought we were gonna
just wanted
start homework now,
And then it was like, well, since we have the end, go to the beginning and then build up.
So I admitted I dropped the ball.
Okay.
But I will get it to
We'll be
you.
okay,
It
we're
doesn't
just
make
meeting one day.
I'll use either kindergarten or first grades, Yeah. or second grades template, because the domains and things from the different Massachusetts, California,
Right.
they're all kind of the same.
Right.
So are
I'll
we
admit
gonna
I
use
use
the, are we gonna use the same domains that we've already come up with for the different grade levels? Cause I noticed in the kindergarten.
I think if we have one that fits, that we should stay consistent, but I think that was the idea, but I don't know for sure. Consistent, like if we're calling it, and I don't remember any of them off the top of my head, but algebra and operations, what do we call that? Okay, algebraic relationships, that if that's a domain for that grade level, we would stay with the same title.
You know, I think Common Core has different, right, it's accounting and cardinality here, that's a new.
For kids.
something new
And it's
that they have.
foundational, it's kind of a foundation domain. I don't know, like,
Yeah, that's kind of important.
I think that,
I'm just going back to fifth grade and grabbing all the domains,
okay,
so.
the only one that would be different than probably is that counting and cardinality for Myra. And we probably
Yeah.
would put it with number base 10, but do you think that needs to stay separate?
It says it.
Those foundational people?
Right there.
Oh, okay.
Just a second.
That's what we were thinking.
We don't have fractions at that level. I don't know, I almost think it needs to say separate in some way, otherwise that area is going to get huge.
So what if we like thought of it like counting and quantity, like to learn your numbers, not just cite numbers, but the actual order of the numbers and where, you know, how much they represent. So instead of using cardinality, we could use counting and quantity, because we start with the 5 and then we go to the 10.
Right.
That's what numbers says. But isn't, did we say numbers? I mean, I don't know.
Number sense and operations in base 10, that's
In
gonna
base 10.
make that one huge at
For-
kindergarten.
At kindergarten, because that's everything, right?
Right. The kids really need to develop a good sense of number. You know, research is showing that the kids that are still counting on their fingers when they get to third grade have never developed a true sense of number. And now they've identified 8 principles of counting. Things like knowing that the last number stated when you're counting is the number of items. Then if you have items close together on a tray and you spread them out, you still have the same number. Kids don't automatically know that, they need lots of experience with it. So I don't know how big we want that area to be. If you look at counting and cardinality by itself, it was a pretty big area to start with. And
Could we just see how big it is and then we need to adjust it? Could we do that?
yeah, but we're gonna have a lot of stuff in there, cause we'll have place value in there too. And so that's a lot of stuff for these little ones, but doesn't matter to me.
We need to change the domains from grade to grade. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that that would be just a foundational domain though, that picks up from pre-K, because in pre-K, they're doing quantity and counting as well. I mean, my 4-year-old son, we were just amazed that he could count to 15, but then he ends with 5. You know, he has no quantity, yeah, that whole piece. So, and he's only 4 in preschool, so they learn to say the numbers. They just don't learn the order, like what they mean, and that 1-to-1 correspond. All those foundational pieces, I think, is a huge chunk before you start operating with them.
Well, we're not talking about doing more or fewer standards. All we're talking about now is whether we stick it under a different.
Like separate it out so that it can be more clear to the teachers and to the students and to the parents, or bunch it all together where it's a little more ambiguous.
I mean, I'm fine sticking with the same sort of headings that we have and putting it under number sense and operations. And if that's, if we're talking, it is number sense that we're talking about, right? I mean, it's just a different form of number sense, right? Or
It's the foundation
right.
piece of number sense.
Right, and we recognize that in some of these, in some of our streams, there'll be some grades where we have a lot of stuff under and some where we have very little under. I don't personally don't see the value in creating a separate heading just for one grade.
Kindergarten.
Right. Yeah, if it fits under what we have, I don't see the value.
And you see, I don't see it fitting under, I see it as the foundation for the number sense piece. I mean, they're connected, it's interconnected, but all of the mathematics is interconnected.
What if it was a foundations of number or foundations of counting or something like that, to show that it's that foundational piece? You know, some of the kids come to school with that,
It's
because they have good preschool programs and they're, you know, but then there are kids that have no preschool experience, they need that foundational piece. And maybe identifying it as a foundation would make sense to people. I can go a couple of directions there, I guess. Or could we have foundation as a big idea under number, sense, and operations?
Say that
Yeah,
again.
I like that idea.
Have foundation as a big idea, or whatever we were calling it, under number, sense, and operations, so that it becomes the first chunk,
So like here under number,
a compromise.
under number and operations here, it says work with numbers 19 to gain foundations for place value. So there would be,
I don't know where you're looking, but.
under number and base 10.
right,
Okay.
so you're saying that essentially there's a different, you know,
I bet we do.
Yeah, like in the kindergarten where they know the number names and count sequence, we might be using some of those pieces. In California, they have them comparing sets, count, recognize, represent, name, and order a number of objects. Know that the larger numbers describe sets with more, you know, so some of that stuff in the foundational piece maybe not all of it, but.
But would you name it foundation? Because I would think we'd want to be more specific, because foundation could be very ambiguous.
Right.
So
Well, you
like
can-
counting and quantity,
So-
or counting and cardinality. I mean,
Well, yeah,
quantity
this
is
is
what it is, quantity.
the bold heading or whatever could be, no, understand basics. I can't get the words out. I was saying, oh, counting and cardinality is what I'm trying to say. I can't get the words.
But we have that.
Number sense, operations based on.
Are you talking about like the bold number one?
Right.
Well, this is just a draft, so.
Are we looking at the California, Massachusetts, and Missouri learning standards? Is that what you're looking at?
I don't have Massachusetts.
I
have-
Put in Dropbox.
But there is,
Oh,
it's in the
Yeah, I've
comparison,
got
isn't
that
it?
out here too.
Yeah, if you pull up the kindergarten comparison in the Dropbox, it has the California, Massachusetts, and Missouri.
Right.
When you were reading from California, there's some very similar things here for Massachusetts, just worded a little differently. Identify positions of objects in sequence first, second, up to fifth.
Yeah.
It's in this, I didn't know if we had it in the other yet.
Where is the rough draft?
This is the drive, but I'll put it on my
The rough draft of what?
making
Of the kindergarten?
We don't have a rough draft yet. That's it, right there.
sure.
We haven't got this
Just
far
the
yet.
comparison of the standards,
Pulling
that's
the titles.
kindergarten comparison is in there, so you see California, Massachusetts, that's what we're looking at.
That's all we've got
Yeah.
right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
To save time, we divvy those up so that we,
Okay, gotcha.
those are the domains of the standards documents. Mhm. Which, yeah, conceptual category.
Under, okay, so, I mean, we can change it. Nothing's set in concrete, so where are we starting? Are we starting with number, sense, and operations in base 10, and then number 1 is a foundations piece of some sort?
We're just counting it,
Or are we,
I mean,
Well, so from common core under counting and cardinality, just no number names and count sequence. So, and then count to 100, count forward, you can get the number, all those things under there.
right,
So,
And which one is that one under?
so that's the common
Look at it.
core under counting
What
and
did it
cardinality.
say? I don't have a California. That's what I have.
yes. We used to go to 31 in Missouri because of the calendar. As far as
Writing the
writing,
numbers.
now we're only going to 20.
Kindergarten, yeah.
Yeah.
So are we
I
all
would
agreed
like
that we
to see-
wanted to start with the number sense? Or do you want to start with?
It makes sense to start with the number sense.
Okay. So now we have to have number 1 under it. That's what we're debating with.
But that's, yeah, from the
language.
comparing them.
I think,
Foundations in counting and quantity, foundations in, what do you,
well, we've instructed all these to say kind of what the student should know, so
Or do,
Like-
what they
like
do.
understand the place value system, form operations, with most students. Those are sort of the, what we've had in the 5th grade standards. So we don't want to just say foundations, we need to
Okay.
say something like,
understand numbers?
Well, I don't see anything wrong with no number names and the count sequence. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a pre-K kindergarten, they learn the name of the number and they learn to count them. And if we sometimes wrote, and we wanna go past that, but
Right.
that's the first thing, like they name them.
Right,
Right.
I'm looking for the big idea piece, the number 1. So,
yeah, that's what this
That's what
is.
we did, yeah,
okay,
that was
so what
what,
do you wanna put there?
well,
Do we have,
No.
we don't have
understand,
language.
or
Okay.
it is, it's identify numbers,
Identification of number, names, and sequence.
so identify numbers and
In order. I mean, sequence.
This is kind of where we struggle from not copying and pasting. It's like,
right,
how do you
because
say
how
no
do you
number
say
names and
count sequence
sequence
in
better?
another way? I mean, it's fine the way it's, I think that it's fine the way it is, it's counting. So identify numbers and the count sequence, but we don't wanna identify the count sequence, we wanna know that, so know number names and count sequence makes sense.
Right.
And it's not ambiguous, I mean, it's right there.
But to be honest, let's see. I don't have a problem with this entire section that they're coming for. I don't have a,
Count to tell the number of, I mean, how can you, I think that we would be doing a lot of disservice by jumping around the names, trying to come up with a better way to say counting objects.
right.
I think Hunter said it before, how many different ways can you say add, subtract, multiply, and divide?
Right,
Exactly.
right,
Yeah,
so I
count
think
to
that
100.
It does become
to
rather
me,
difficult
these are,
figure that out.
they're not,
I'm pretty sure these are the
Do
ones
we
people
wanna
not
say
having
our
a
ones
problem.
and tens?
I'm pretty sure these are the ones people are not having a
I
problem.
would like to see fives
Or
in there
just
too,
down to 100?
if we're gonna
Oh,
specify.
I think we're just doing the number one, were we just doing the big ones, or are you gonna do the
Well,
standards underneath?
I was just saying, I don't have a problem with all 3 points under this on Common Core. I mean, so if we,
That's number 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, so
Okay,
go,
so
okay,
he
I
was
got it.
going to the standards, and I was still
Yeah.
thinking the
oh yeah, I was
cluster
saying the
headings.
standards under no number names in the count sequence.
Those
That's what I was
three.
Okay, so those three, let's see,
Okay.
count to 100 by ones and by tens. And what were you gonna say,
I would
Brett?
like to see fives in there. I know we,
Yeah.
Ones, fives.
at least here in my district, they used to do fives.
We
And that's
do.
when, and that's
We
when they
start with
introduced
fives.
also the nickel and the dime as well for just identify with. Just skip counting anyway.
Fives and tens, okay.
Oh, I always put a B in there. How'd that happen?
Because we're watching you.
No question, yeah.
Okay,
In the second,
Count to tell the number of objects.
So do that one the way it is?
I'm fine, that one counts tell the number of objects. But then the standard there, understand the relationship between numbers and quantities, isn't that just one-to-one correspondence is what they're saying? Sort of what you were talking about earlier, Myra, that they know, like when you count, if you touch this one, you don't touch it twice, you know, you just say one and then you go to the next one. Isn't that
Yeah.
all they're saying?
But also that 2 is bigger than 1. Like the cardinality, 2 comes after 1 and 3 comes after 2 and includes 2 and the 1, that type of ordering. And as we're ordering, it's getting larger and including what you've had before. So it is foundational to adding and subtracting, basically.
And we can put one-to-one correspondence in there, or we can put it in parentheses.
Well, that's what they have under A. When counting
Right, they're
objects
describing
in standard
one-to-one.
order, pairing each object with one and only one number name. And each number name with one and only one object. To me, that's very explicit.
I like the way this one is stated. It says recognize that a number can be used to represent how many objects are in a set or to represent the position of an object in a sequence. So it's talking
That, yeah,
down.
and that would be the last number you say. So the last number you say tells you how many are in that set, or the last number tells you how much is in that set. But here we're actually doing the counting still. So do we think, understand the relationship between number of quantities and connect counting the cardinalities of lines that would be okay standard? Or stop that in. That's before the A, B, C. Just a
Right.
statement on number 4.
So just use that, everybody good with that? At least for the instant.
Mhm. Read yours again, Caroline, what it said again.
Recognize that a number can be used to represent how many objects are in a set or to represent the position of an object in a sequence.
So how many objects are in a set corresponds with that number 5? How many
Here's what it
objects are
says
in
in
the
the-
sequence, yeah, I think that's with number 5.
Recognize is a good word to use.
Represent.
It's interesting, because a lot of these really are closely related to the pre-kindergarten from the curriculum focal points, building that foundational piece. Back to that, because this one says, develop an understanding of the meanings of whole numbers and recognize the number of objects in small groups without counting and by counting. So the without counting is the sumatizing. The first and most basic mathematical algorithm. They understand that number of words refer to quantity. They use one-to-one correspondence to solve problems by matching sets and comparing number amounts and in counting objects to 10 and beyond. They understand that the last word that they state in counting tells how many. They count to determine number amounts and compare quantities using language such as more than and less than, and they order sets by the number of objects in them. That's pre-kindergarten according to NCTM. When the kindergarten at NCTM, children use numbers including written numerals to represent quantities and to solve quantitative problems such as counting objects in a set, creating a set with a given number of objects, comparing and ordering sets or numerals, and that goes on, but you can tell they're moving up a step from that. They choose, combine, and apply effective strategies for answering quantitative questions, including quickly recognizing the number in a small set, counting and producing sets of given sizes, counting the number in combined sets and counting backward.
I was looking for counting backward after this. To see count forward, beginning from the given number. Wouldn't that be the place to put backward in also?
Backwards there somewhere, because we just had that conversation on Wednesday.
Is there a standard that this kid's gonna have to come in already, cause I know they're tested way on, starting at 4 months, they're tested a lot, all the way up where they get into certain programs, all the way up from pre-kindergarten and so on and so forth. So we're starting out with a kindergarten curriculum, is there a standard that they have to meet before they can get there?
Something that you have to remember is a kindergarten's not even required in the state of Missouri.
And you, and obviously preschool isn't either.
So, yeah, so for us to say that there's some sort of standard that they have to have there, there's no grounds for us to do that really. I mean, because parents can say, well, you know, I'm not sending my kid to first grade, and so.
7 years of age or first grade
Right.
is what's required in Missouri. And in 25 years, I only had one that did that. But
So we're kinda set, so they would be kinda set up for failure if they were held back that long, would they not?
Well, that's assuming that no one worked with them at home.
there was a lot,
I stayed home
lot
and
of
worked
catch
with
up.
my children at home.
It just depends on the situation.
Okay, just a question. I hear it being tested all the time, for 4 months, and 2 years, and 3 years, and whether they get into this.
Well, there's a lot of
program or that
early,
program.
yeah, if there's a child who struggles, I mean, with developmental issues, there's a lot of early childhood programs in the districts that can catch them up, whether it's speech delays or learning delays, behavioral delays. So, because of all that testing, there is a lot of things in place.
And it's getting better all the time. It's making such a
It was a lot better at one point, and then it got cut back a lot.
And if there's a
I think so.
preschool
It was
offered through
better.
the district, they
It's
will go to
diminished quite a
preschool,
bit.
but if the preschools are not offered through the district, you will not find. There's a lot of the lower income that they're not going to preschool. So,
Well,
if it's offered through the district,
it's
they'll go.
offered, but not everybody can go.
No. Well, you gotta sign them up quick.
There's not many districts that have it.
No, there's not.
All
No.
No, and and it's like, it's not even offered, if it's, like, Washington is so big that we can't even get it at Martha's unless we put it in our building. And right now, we don't have anywhere to put it in our building. So we have kids that come in, they come in knowing absolutely nothing. And so,
So they don't have to be doing preschool.
no, well, no, in Washington they do, but if they're out in the, parents gotta then drive them to preschool, that's not happening, so.
Our district has it, but they take the neediest kids, so the kids that really need it, so it's
Okay, so on A, do we want to use that language? Do we wanna go to a one-to-one correspondence type language? I think this is a little more specific on what they need to do, but.
Myra, I'm sorry, say
I
your
was just-
question.
I was just asking on A, under count to tell the number of objects. That 4A,
Mhm.
I was just asking, do we wanna use that language, or do we wanna switch over to more of a one-to-one correspondence
I
language?
think this is more clear.
I think
to
it's
anyone
much
reading
more
it.
specific.
Like, if you say one-to-one
Yeah.
correspondence, some individuals that may not have that pre-K kindergarten
Right.
training don't
Yeah.
have the same understanding as this. I mean, flat out, count one object,
Right.
one number. I mean, it explains it.
Right,
To me, this is more clear for parents than if we use.
oh, I agree,
I'm fine with this.
I'm just, okay, I was just trying to get the next step here.
I was trying to find, because we just had missing number and we talked about, so I'm thinking that we aligned that with our number 2. Beginning from a given number with that known sequence, like we had 3 blank 5, where the kid had to put in 4, so they are counting, but it's not from 1, and they're using the clue of 3 and 5 to figure out what goes in the middle there. Or if it's, blank 5, 6, So they're coming up with that first number, 4, 5, 6. I was trying to figure out what we aligned it to, but I think we did align it to that number 2.
Does that go back up to number 2?
That's what I was thinking that we aligned it to. I was gonna double check it.
That's how I always tested my first graders.
That,
Started
a lot
any
of
number
tests
and,
do that, like Ames Web and different programs have that kind of test as well.
I knew if they could count on, they had an idea how the numbers went. The
But
ones that
that's
had to
kind
go
of
back
where
and
the
start at 1,
backwards falls
yeah.
in too,
yeah.
because we were talking about counting backwards. I think that's where that, besides listening to the teacher count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to get the class back in order.
We do that a lot.
Yeah, that's where they learned the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 pretty quickly.
My count is like, start at 10 and get to 0.
Anybody ever hear from downstairs?
I don't know if they said to me.
Oh, I'll send you.
Okay.
I mean, the sub parts underneath that, I think are probably, they seem pretty clear as well. The A, B, and C.
Are you looking at the?
Yeah.
When you say that?
Okay.
The counting objects say the number names in the standard order, pairing each object with one and only one number name, and each number name with only with one and only one object. If that's what you're saying. Then understand the last number name said tells the number of objects counted. Is what Myra was saying earlier. I mean, these. I'd be hard pressed to say it any clearer.
Are we coming to them for sure?
What'd you say?
Downstairs.
Downstairs. Okay, so that's being our work group that's wanting to know when you would like for us to come to. Let's see.
Yeah, they may respond and say, we're in that place.
Okay.
We want you to come with us.
That's our assessment. I was trying to, because we call it counting backwards, I just don't know what we do. This is actually our first. This is our first one. Mm-hmm. We're doing.
I have a question for you now.
Mm-hmm.
I've always kind of had an assumption, I guess, that count forward beginning from a given number within the known sequence goes all the way to 100. Do you read it that way too? It doesn't say that. I assumed it because of the first bullet, count to 100. We could
We
put.
don't go past 20.
No.
See, I
Like
wonder
in
if
our
we need
dis-
to.
at our
I wonder if
district
we
level.
need
As far
to narrow
as far as
that.
counting or writing?
Counting.
Counting, we
count
always
to
would,
100.
yeah,
You're
But-
counting, they count.
right,
As
and
far
I think
as-
that's what this is if you're just counting.
Right, but
You
I'm
would go to
asking
100
from the
if
next
you
one
ride.
where, am I going to ask a kindergartner to start at 43 and
No,
count?
no.
Or am I going to limit it
That's in first
to 1 to
grade.
20? I
That's
think
in
we need to
first
clarify that, and then that would open it up for putting the backward in within that same range. But I was thinking okay, I'm not gonna ask a kindergartner to start at 43 and go backwards.
Well, and I was just thinking of those missing numbers, you know, like the 4, 5, 6, like those examples, we didn't use double, like we didn't do 43, 45, 46 for
Okay,
kindergarten.
so I
Like
think
that's
maybe-
more first grade in my mind, but
Right, so I think we need to maybe clarify that at this level, you know? Because the first thing we have is count to 100, the next thing we have count forward, and there's no parameters for that.
from any given number.
Right,
From a given number.
from a given number, so it's not limiting it in any way, and I think
Given
maybe
number
we
between
need to,
1 and 20.
yeah.
Yeah.
What, you know, whatever we, but if we're gonna write to 20, then they should know those numbers fairly
Really
well.
well.
Yeah, I think
So, I don't know,
Because we want them to subitize 5 and 10 and hopefully eventually 22
you know what
sentences.
subitizing is? I don't want to assume. The subitizing is
Thank
like,
you for not.
well, because no,
This corner has no idea.
we've all been learning that. You know how if somebody tosses a small handful of like candy on the table, you can glance at it and know how many are there? Kindergartners can do that to 5 fairly easily. Adults can only do it to 7. But what adults do is we start grouping in our mentally in our mind. So
Okay.
if let's say that I have Kit Kats and peanut butter cups, and I toss some out, you may see them based on how they fall, or you may see them as 3 Kit Kats and 5 peanut butter cups, and you put it together. Does that make sense? That's what subitizing is.
So then we use like a 10 frame, so we start with the 5 frame so that when they're organizing their objects, then when they see them, the frame filled, they can know it's 5 without having to count 5 every time.
And that's, are you familiar with a 5 frame and a 10 frame? Okay, so you can see how being able to do that really helps kids more quickly determine what numbers they're looking at and what they need. But that's what subitizing is. That helps.
It's different from supersize me.
Supersize me.
Okay, so back to that,
So do we think 20 to in from a given number
between
0 to 20?
0 to 20.
I don't know. Up to 20.
I think we're gonna write to 20, they should be able to,
So count forward beginning from a given number
agree, disagree, I heard a
up to
sigh.
20 within the known sequence.
We're wanting to fix this one here.
Up to 20.
So that-
Well, I was just
20, or
thinking,
put it in
I was just thinking
parentheses.
if it's count to 20, do you actually count starting at 0?
Yeah, that's what we were saying too.
Well, on this
So if
particular
you
one,
said
we
count forward beginning
any.
from a given number between 0 and 20, that brings 0 as a counting 0, 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it would have to be between 1 and 20. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Cause we don't,
Yeah,
I think
I
they
have
asked
never
them to
started at 0.
No. The count on Sesame Street doesn't start at 0. It is a number, we can't leave it out.
Can't leave it out.
and when you look at that in parentheses, it specifically says instead of having to start at 1.
Right.
So.
We've never thought about that before because.
I don't know, because I've slowed down and
Oh, yeah,
been
just
really,
count to,
Well, that's what the one above it says, count forward beginning from a given number to 20 within the known sequence.
If you gave it,
couldn't we just say
kindergartner.
between 1 and 20?
or if you said to a kindergartner, count on from 37, could they do it?
You said what? What'd you say?
Count from 37 or
some of them
Some
probably
of them
will.
will,
Some could.
there's gonna be a few.
The vast
It's
majority
not
is
gonna
gonna
be.
I would, you're gonna struggle for first graders to be able to do that.
I did that with first graders at the beginning of the year, 'cause sitting with 25 of them and asking them to count to 100 was just not in my game plan. But it told me, you know, I use numbers low enough, like 32, and I'd say count until I tell you to stop, because I wanted them to go over a decade number. Because sometimes they would get to 39 and then go 30-10, or they would go off somewhere. Some of the kids would go, well, that told me they needed to start at 1 to get to 32. I mean, it gave me information about them. It didn't, which was good to know. But I didn't expect them all to be able to do it.
And that's first grade.
And that was first grade.
Does it make sense to limit it?
From a given number between
But
one
say
and
Declan
20.
could probably just say a bunch of numbers. I mean, he's heard them, so
quote
we could be lucky that he.
Between 1 and 20.
You never know, yeah.
Can we change what I highlighted to between 1 and 20? We can always change it back. Beginning from a given number between 1 and 20. And then, Marilyn, would this be a place to put your counting backward piece?
On number 2.
No, number
Well,
one, right
that's,
there. with
that
the-
second bubble,
Count forward
On the backside of it.
and back.
yeah, on the back side of it.
Forward and
Backwards from a given number between 1 and 20.
Put it in the sentence, count forward.
Okay, 19, 18, 17.
Yeah, I was thinking by making it a separate sentence, they would try to do them both at the same time. But it doesn't matter, that's just my thinking. I wouldn't want, It doesn't matter to me either. Count forward and backward, you wanna do it that way then?
I think it would
Like
be
the second
easier for
sentence,
teachers
just
to assess by having separated, like having 2.
Cause then they can say they
Yeah,
mastered
we
the
can-
There's a
forward,
lot of
but they
kids
may not master the
forward,
back.
but the backwards is
So
more
if it's
challenging,
separated,
just
then
like
they-
adding is easier than subtracting.
Yes, it's a separate assessment.
Does that make sense? Does that work? If I didn't have to turn it around for adults, but. So then we had A, B, and C from that next section,
Okay, we're good there.
and then we're down to count how many.
Well, and that number 5, I think, is what Caroline was reading about, the how many, and I, this one is pretty specific, like tells you strategies, but I think that one's clear cut on what it is that they need to do.
Okay, so just so let me see my numbers are matching it all.
Me as 20 things arranged in a line, or 2 in a array, or a circle.
I guess eventually we'll clean this all up, won't we?
Yeah,
This has to be a 3.
out that many.
3.
So basically, we wanna make sure that they can count out any given number of objects 1 to 20. But the last number says the amount.
So when they get to 6, how many is there?
6, which is more than 5.
Yes.
That includes
Oh, so it's just right under this one. There we go. Okay. So how did that
It's
sound?
really nice when you
Caroline?
say teacher.
That one about counting to answer how many questions, stuff of why.
Be careful what you shoot for.
Yeah.
So, but I use it since that.
Which one are you looking at now?
Do you remember which?
I was that particular, when I can just go in, I just like this.
I don't have that one at all. What about, understand that the last word that they state in counting tells how many? That's not as good as that. I think yours was still worded way better. I'm just reading out of the focal points.
What did you say? It's number 5 on the count to answer how many questions about as many as 20 things arranged in a line, rectangular array, circle. I just think that this gives, I mean, it's fine, it just gives them a lot of information
Yeah.
about it.
And you said you liked what Caroline read earlier.
I thought it sounded more clean.
Yeah.
but It's the same concept, it was the exact same concept.
Where did you find it at?
It was in
This is the
Minnesota.
Minnesota math standards, and right now I've got it in front of me, that I don't think you go below third grade for some of this.
Is that the most current standards in
I'm
Minnesota?
gonna say it was, oh, here it is. Was it recognized that a number can be used to represent? Was it that one?
I think so.
It's just not this one. Recognize that a number can be used to represent how many objects are in a set or to represent the position of an object in a data sequence.
They recognize that a number can be used to,
How many are in a set? Given a number from 1 to 20, count out that many objects.
Another thing that's important in kindergarten is
given,
addressing, are they doing that on paper or are they doing that with objects?
I think they're doing it both ways.
Well, this one is count and tell the number of objects, where the writing one was a different.
what was the last part, Caroline?
Um,
How many are in a set, and then what came after that?
Well, given a number from 1 to 20.
Recognize that a number can be used to represent how many objects are in a set or to represent the position of an object in a sequence.
But we've already got the sequence part, so
Okay.
it's how many are in a set, given a number from 1 to 20. We don't wanna have more than 20 in a set,
Okay,
and count out that many objects.
given a number from 1 to 20, count out that many objects.
Well, do we want that count out that many objects?
Aren't you addressing that already in the other items?
Well, I'm just thinking if we left it more open, kids who could supervise could say there's 5. Without having to go 1, 2, 3, I mean, that's the ultimate goal, is to get them to recognize 5 as 5. They don't start there, but it takes
No.
a while.
Teaching that time concept of dice.
Oh, yeah, the dice.
The 5 dots is like 5, and on those two.
Because they're
those
organized
are
in a
both
way
good.
that's supervising, yeah.
Cards.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know, I just feel like a lot of that one has already been addressed. Oh, it hasn't. Perhaps not any different.
Well, the thing though, like with the dice and the cards, they're not scattered configurations, and I think that that's the how many is any amount from 1 to 20 and in any way, and then they have to figure out how to get it.
How to organize their thinking. Circles are really hard too.
But like I'm given a number from 1 to 20, count how many objects, don't you already understand the nuance? It's not I just.
This
think
is
the
the-
difference
this
is
is the
sometimes they
object to
do-
keep, like this is the object where the other is just the row, like counting number names.
And I think it's, when they have to produce, it's one step beyond. So if I lay them on the table and they have to count, that's
the first step.
different than me giving them a number and them making the decision of how many that's going to be. I think it's a little higher level skill.
Because they can organize it in any way that
Right.
they see fit. So it may be equal groups or it could be some other kind of configuration. 2s, 5s, 10s.
Why wants to put a 2 there when I have a 2 already?
So the last one's compare numbers under this category.
What about, talking about what's one more and one less? What is that we gotta see here?
California has that. Compare 2 or more sets of objects, up to 10 objects in each group, and identify which set is equal to, more than, or less than.
That's what comes under compare numbers, so. Could we? Have we made a decision?
We compare numbers, is that the next, that's the big idea,
And
of the next, and there's
I
only
think
one
it's
way to
pretty
say it.
explicit,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's only one
compare
way to write
numbers.
that.
I'm surprised they have it in the back, so
Right. I have it too, I should be right.
California's was pretty clear, I don't know, and then, I mean, it doesn't, this isn't pretty clearly also in Missouri law standards too. I mean, but the California's was just more short and sweet, where it just said compare two or more sets of objects up to 10 in each group and identify which set is equal to, more than, or less than 10.
Works for me. I got the wrong place. Up to 10 objects in
Each group and identify which set is equal to, more than, or less than the other.
Okay.
I mean,
So,
and this one talks about comparing two numbers between 1 and 10 presented as written numerals, or it's count, recognize, number. I mean, California says count, recognize, represent, name, and order a number of objects up to 30.
30.
But we have
20.
20.
right.
I know, they said 30, that's California.
I think the big thing there is the written,
Massachusetts.
going to the representational. Again, that's more difficult, because they
So I
have to
think we
know
wanna
what that
go-
numeral represents.
It's fine for them to, like our standard says 20, but you're doing counter math, you're going past that
Right.
anyway. But for us to test them, I think we need to be consistent on what we expect all kindergarten, like where's the middle ground? Because if we're all over the board,
What does that mean when it's saying compare two numbers that are written? Is it talking about greater than less than basically?
Yeah, that they
Like
can
circle.
look at a 5, and they
Usually
can
they
look at
don't-
an 8 and know which one's greater than the
usually
less
they
than,
don't
not
use
looking
the
at objects.
inequality sign, but they touch the one or circle the one, which one has more, which one has less, basically is what we're saying, more or less.
Because when you look at that, that can be interpreted in more than one way. Compare two numbers.
The reason they're saying written, because if there were pictures of teddy bears, that'd be easier than the number, because the number's pretty abstract. So the number 4 compared to the number 5 for a kid, they have to think, okay, what's 4? How can I represent that, like with sticks or circles? And what's 5? And then which one has more? So it's 2 steps.
When we're talking about the written, we're not going to have the greater than less than symbol on
No.
that, so
The inequality symbol.
it's interesting, it's pretty open.
So,
More or less, which one has more, which one has less, or circle the
Yeah,
bigger
circle,
number,
just
the
circle,
smaller
yes,
number.
that's
right.
And hopefully the test doesn't have a big 10 in the middle.
Oh gosh.
Trick them
That
every
would
time,
be-
don't we?
that would be
There's an I
mean.
gotcha on it. It's fair.
I think you should use the language in the card, I think you should use it.
Right. And I hear teachers greater than, less than, bigger, smaller, like they use them synonymously so that they build their vocabulary because they,
Mouth with the greater than sign.
Pac-Man.
I know, they associate with.
Yeah, Peck, they do associate it with this belt or alligator.
Okay, what's next under this heading? Number sense and operations in base 10.
We have the people numbers, so then the last one would be that digits, the place value one.
Okay,
Work with numbers 11 to 19 to gain foundation for place value.
Are we gonna do any compose and decompose?
That would be under this one. Just so we'll get our tens. It says compose and decompose numbers from 11 to 19 into 10 ones. And some further ones.
So do we wanna use that whole heading there, work with numbers 11 to 19 to gain foundations, or do we just want work with numbers 11 to 19? I think the place value piece is probably important.
Right, I think we have to have foundations for place value. I mean, that's their introduction to the base 10 system.
Okay, so then it's just what do we wanna say with it?
Well, definitely the compose and decompose.
Okay,
Just for reference, my teachers hate those two words.
Compose and decompose.
do they have a recommendation? No.
Breakdown.
Just
Build
dump
up,
that
break
on me,
down.
huh?
If you could just say add and subtract.
But
But
then
not
we're
with,
gonna
not with
have,
place value.
It's not necessarily.
it can get tested differently if you say add and subtract and that's how we
You
don't
gotta
do it.
break it into.
Yeah, we don't
break
want,
it
we don't
down,
want
build it up.
kindergartners having to add and subtract to 19.
I know, it's not that. Teach.
I didn't like those words either. They kinda dumped them on us, back with the degrees with no explanation.
I mean, just
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have.
Then, yeah,
break apart, what you say.
Well, you're breaking it
Decompose,
apart,
that's
like a
exactly
10,
what
a
it is.
12 is a 10 and a 2.
Right.
It's really not, so you using your base 10 numbers is what you're doing to so they can see it using mental map. That's what the decompose is trying to get them to do.
It's just not a little bit.
It's not a little kid word, no.
No. Well,
Yeah,
it's not,
well, yeah,
you know, it's not a parent word either.
no, that's why I always say break it apart, and I tell the kids decomposition, it's dead animals on the road. Just think about it, break it apart. It gets the 3rd grade boys or 5th grade boys to get decomposed.
Yeah.
It broke apart,
Do it
right?
once.
It broke it down.
so when it says 10 ones and some further ones, what about 10 ones and additional ones? Or more than 10
It's in the
ones?
common core.
Get them interested in the base.
It's NBT 1, it's on page 12, right at the very top.
Because it says further ones doesn't make sense to me very well.
10 ones and some further ones.
Compose and decompose.
So you have a
numbers
group
from
of 10
11
ones and then you have 3 more over here and that's your
Or additional
13.
ones.
Yeah,
Further is distance. I mean,
yeah.
it doesn't,
Those and decompose numbers. And we're open for suggestions on those 2 words.
I think though, like they said,
I
they've
think
been around with the
mathematically.
grade level
I
expectations.
mean, they're in
teachers know this, where
Massachusetts, they're
parents
in
will-
Missouri, I
yeah.
mean, they're in the Glees, so they're gonna be wherever you look at.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think we need to make it so complicated on a lot of these, especially if it's kindergarten. Compose and decompose numbers up to 10 objects and pictures.
Up to 10. Yeah, we're doing 11 and 19 because we're talking place value at this point. The up to 10 was on the other, we had that with the objects.
Could you
Yeah.
say compose and decompose numbers up to 20 with objects and pictures?
But we're trying to get to the place value
Just
system.
focus on-
Yeah, we've got the counting, like we've taken care of quantity, sequence, number, one-to-one correspond, we've done everything. The last piece is the number in base 10.
Yeah.
And that's place value, so it's gotta know, like if I have 13, I have a group of 10 and 3 more.
Yeah.
If I have 15, I have a group of 10 and
Yeah.
5 more. Like I'm bundling, you know how you bundle the days of the week?
And you don't have a problem with that at kindergarten, do you? With going ahead and bundling the 10 and having a 10?
The teachers were talking, because I was just meeting last week at one of the schools and they were talking about how they do the bundling, but they almost like using the place value blocks better because they're more proportional and that the kids are getting the tally marks. I think it was the 2nd grade teachers were talking about when they get to subtracting, the tally marks kind of get in the way of the subtracting. And so if they wish they wouldn't have done the tally marks so fast and that they would have stuck with circles, because you could cross out circles.
Right, but I
The
think,
tally marks when you
Yeah.
group in groups of 5, and so now the kids are getting that all mixed
but
up,
I think my
but they do
question,
bundle, they do count in bundles of groups of 10 and then put those kids
so they're
together.
not limiting to 10 ones and some more ones. They're actually bundling a set of 10 and talking about it that way. See, I like that so much better.
Well, how are you interpreting it? Because that's how I
Proposing-
interpreted it. They're composed
proposing
and decomposed
ones
numbers from
into
11
10.
and 19,
So they're putting it together.
10s and 1s.
Yeah, but they weren't actually bundling the 10s in this. They had them as 10 ones and then
Or a set
additional
of 10.
ones.
We do
Yeah.
use 10 frames a lot, like we put them in 10 frames.
Yeah, see, that makes
Physically
sense.
putting them in 10 frames.
They need to know there's more than one way to do it.
Yeah.
It's not just the bundle of straws, or it's not just the 10 frame, it could be snap cubes,
Right,
all kinds of things.
okay, so,
The experiences to,
Well, and those snap cubes come in with
Right,
the OA, because that's where you're trying to make 10 or make 5, and so when you're putting them together, you've got 3 blue and 2.
so how do we wanna say that? Compose and decompose from 11 to 19 into,
10
10,
sets
10.
of 10 and extra ones. I don't know. I don't like the further ones. The further ones doesn't to me, but that, I mean, it's still, and it does say objects or drawings.
I don't really get that whole thing.
What if we, instead of recognize, or compose and decompose, what if it's, recognize that team number, I don't know, just teams, numbers between 11 and 19 are comprised of a 10 and ones. I'm trying to think of another way.
Comprise versus compose. Sorry, I smiled on that one.
Made up
Contain.
I mean,
Well, but compose and decompose means put them together and take
Right.
them apart. Whereas the others are real vague, it doesn't say put them together and take them
Yeah.
apart.
Well, why do you need to say that if we're talking about understanding base 10?
Because they have to understand what happens across that place value chart, and then this is just a simple first very basic step of place value. As you go to the right, one place is 10 times greater, and as you go to the left, it's 1/10 less.
Well, they get
So,
very explicit at the end on the.
and so this is just the basic of it, but if you look at that place value chart, that's how, when you compose it and decompose it, and by base 10, that's where that comes from. And regardless, I don't really care for decompose in that word either, but it means just break apart. And when you tell the kids that and you start using break apart and put together, and you correlate those two phrases, they start to get it, but you have to put it in the, we ought to put it in layman's terms for everybody, and I get that, but that's what it means. So, I know, it stinks, but I don't like decompose better than anybody else.
There's another one down here that says, that this is an example that might give us some ideas. It says read, write, and represent whole numbers up to 120. Representations may include numerals, addition and subtraction, pictures, tally marks, number lines, and manipulatives such as bundles of sticks.
That sounds like
I
first
know,
grade.
That sounds
that's
like
Yeah,
first
that's
grade.
a lot.
I thought that was first.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
that's
this
first
one,
grade.
even how it's written here, I mean, it has in parentheses, because we haven't talked about writing it in the equation, and I think that's gonna be important that they learn that equal sign can go either. But understand that these numbers are composed of 10 ones and 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 9 ones. So they break it down pretty explicit there. So compose, decompose numbers from 11 to 19 into groups or sets of ones or 10s with extra ones or additional ones with the additional ones.
Okay. Could we have that understand piece as a separate bullet? So that it's not such a long piece to understand.
I think that's just a little,
Say it again, Myra.
Just that understand that these numbers are composed of 10 ones and 1, 2, 3, 4. If we're gonna use that, can we have it as a separate
I
bullet?
don't think we need it.
I don't
with
think
what
so
we
either.
said right
Yeah, I don't
there.
Okay,
But we do need, it says composition or decomposition by a drawing or equation.
okay.
Recording it, that they're gonna be writing it.
Okay, so do we want that as a separate bullet?
Do you think, I think that our kindergarten, we would expect that.
Yeah.
For them to write an equation and to recognize that we
It
can
might
might
say
be
year.
within a drawing.
6 equals this or this equals 6, like the equal sign, so that we're not always having it in one place.
Right. But are you thinking about like the 18 equals 10 plus 8
Mm-hmm.
or 10 plus 8 equals 18?
Right, right.
And you think that's
All of
appropriate kindergarten?
With groups of 10 and the extra. So that's how they would, like buckets, there'd be a set of 10 and then the extra. You're only going 11 to 19. So all of them are
And as
written.
long as they have the objects there.
That's why I said, yeah, we would need drawing or equation.
Just my personal feeling. I've got first graders in my district that are having trouble with doing that.
First grade with groups of 10 and extras.
It's
With,
all right
with
to-
the, with the writing of an equation or something like that, because, yeah, they're coming home with that, 10 block or the 5 block and then,
Right.
okay, I need you to make an equation out of this. You know, it's got the block of 5 and it's got 3 sitting out here all by themselves. And they need to make an equation, and they're having trouble doing that. And that's in first grade, so I mean,
In first grade. Mhm.
I don't know how many people in here was necessary, so
But it's only, the difference though is it's only 10. And you start 5 frame, 10 frame, and then the extra, so it's really limited in the numbers. I'm wondering if in first grade, they would be, it opens it because it's all those different groups of 10. So like they could have a picture of 23 and 6 more, and they're trying to write that equation.
They should be able to do that. It's still pretty early in the year.
That's true.
So what's the real discussion here? I mean, we have
The
to,
equation piece,
whether or not they should be able to put it into an equation.
the composition or decomposition by a drawing or equation, and it does use or. We would have or, but I mean, I know we push the equation just with those little numbers, but we don't call them equations, we usually call them number sentences. Write the number sentence to represent, because that's one of the math practices too, modeling with mathematics. The model is an equation or expression. So you would model like what the quantity, how would you write it like a mathematician? You'd write 2 plus 10.
And see,
Well,
well, you said you pushed it, your district pushes that.
Right.
And I think that's important too. I mean, there's nothing that says
that we wouldn't.
that you can't, you know, if it's not there. I think it's questionable to say everybody has to. You know,
So I'm thinking about like the worksheets or something my kids might have, and I could see like, you know, a group of 10 monkeys and 8 monkeys or something, and then underneath they'd write 10 and there'd be a plus sign, and then they'd write 8, and then they'd write
And there'd usually be a line, a plus, a line,
Right.
and your equal.
right.
Yeah.
And then on a test, you could also think about how they might have something like that, and then have a selection of numbers and say which one of these matches this picture.
Where you circle the number.
And you'd say, oh, it's 10 plus 8 or whatever. I mean, I think at that level, I think kindergartners could probably do that.
Okay, but listen, what you just said, at that level, I think maybe some kindergartners can do that. We're talking about,
All
this is gonna be
kindergarten.
All kinders being
Yes.
tested on it.
for
This is
all
the
kindergartners
expectation
to
at the
be
end of the year.
master- all of them need to master that skill in order to be proficient in that.
And
It's not something that's necessary, I mean, it's good that the district promotes that and that they talk about it and provide examples of it. But is it something we should expect our kindergartners to do an equation that says 18 plus 10 plus 8?
What-
But without
The-
picture,
the
with
operations
pictures.
and upgrade.
Are they writing the equation, or are they just filling in the blank of the equation? Like Tim said, you know, you got the plus sign, you got blanks, and then you got that.
But going from a
Right,
testing
in the
standpoint at the end of
Record
the year
each
or something like
composition
that,
is what it says, record each composition,
right?
doesn't that mean right?
If you say right in the question, then it opens it up to say,
Basically, they're just being
Right.
exposed to it, because we're asking them to be proficient to count anything between 1 and 20.
And then right now it's saying using objects or drawings, it's not actually having them use even numbers at that point.
Or equations.
So it's even just using, so
I think the objective should say, understand, when you look at a group of objects that's 110 and 6 ones, that's 16. Understand, when you look at a group of objects and it's 1 group of 10 and 2 ones, that's 12. Those are the things that if kindergartners really have a sound foundation on that, when they get to you, they're gonna understand this stuff. If you throw in all this stuff after that and you have them write equations to match up to it, it's too much. They're not ready for that.
How would they show their understanding that 12 is 10 and 2?
they would have to
With
actually put the
objects.
objects or drawings with, right
Either
with the
the
teacher.
objects or look at a picture of
Yeah,
a number
concrete.
of 10 and 2 and write the number 12 under that picture of those objects, or look at a picture of the same.
It wouldn't have to be
whatever
written form.
representation,
It would
and
be
write
sitting
the
right there
number
with the teacher. It would have to be an object or a drawing. It wouldn't have to be a written form.
But then that drops the modeling with mathematics from kindergarten.
How does it drop?
So really,
they're
instead of
modeling at
requiring
their
them to be
level of
proficient at it here, we need to be asking them to be familiar with the concept instead of being proficient at how to
I think that's what a lot of kindergarten is becoming familiar with what you're about to encounter.
And that's why we have foundations of these things.
But if they did it with the objects and then wrote it on the line, like we said, is in the line, the space there. So if they had the 8, wrote the 8, and on the next line wrote the 10.
So what we really need to do is write it
And
here,
then wrote it.
specific enough.
Couldn't we do that? If they knew how to write those numbers, they
We're
could
not
fill in
testing
the
for
blanks with the
proficiency.
objects in front of them,
We're
right?
testing for the concept.
We gave them the
Why don't
objects.
they understand
And they're not
place
writing
values?
an equation from,
That we need groups of 10 and
That's right.
single ones.
They'd be
they're not writing the
equation.
equation from
I feel like we've
verbatim.
got a couple conversations. We do, and I can't concentrate on either one of them, so, sorry.
I was thinking out loud, I'm sorry. Because I was trying to think about
I
what
was
she was.
following it all. I was
How
like,
did you
right,
do
I was
that?
understanding like what? I think
I
we're
think-
saying the same thing. We've got to figure out a
I
way
think
that we
I think
can.
the word right is what's going in.
So it's
Because
not-
if
we're
you
not
say
actually-
write an equation,
Yeah, that-
write an equation means from start to finish, including the plus and the equal.
So we're not really writing the equation if they're just
And they're
filling
not
in
writing the
blank.
equation if they're just filling in numbers. No, they're not.
That's what I.
No, not if they're looking at an object and they look at the objects and they've counted 6 and they already know how to write 6 because we've already established that in a standard. So they count 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Write 6 on the first blank. They got 10 objects in the second pile. They count 10. They put 10 in the second blank. You got 6 plus 10. How many do you have? You put them all together. Now you got count those, and now you have 16. You have filled in all 16. You have created that equation. That is-
Or if you understand it, then you don't have to recount them
You
all.
don't have to count them all. Exactly.
But that doesn't prove that the child understands placement.
Right, because they have to recognize the 10.
Yeah, they have to recognize the 10. Yes.
That's what I was saying, it's the exposure.
Right.
They're
It's
learning
not
to-
understanding
they're-
it completely, or maybe not all of them, maybe,
Yeah,
but
when we
just to be
get,
exposed to it.
And
when we
that's one
get
thing with
into
kindergarten.
algebra, we're going to be doing equations with beginning, addition, and subtraction. And so you would hope by the end of the year that they would be leaning in this direction with these larger numbers and seeing that.
Of course.
But I also see that we would want to make it specific enough not to be assessing them on addition of 10 plus 7 equals 17.
True. That's true.
That's my whole.
That's true.
So how it's worded, record each composition, decomposition by a drawing or equation. What can we write that would be better? We want them to record what they're doing, because that's what, see the picture, draw the
Given
numbers,
the
so
16
record.
objects and decompose
What if they're using,
10 and 6.
just thinking out loud, what if they use objects or drawings
Objects
and
or
then
drawings.
record it as an equation. Using the objects or drawings, and then go into the recording that.
But couldn't you go backwards? Like, couldn't you give them 16 and then
And then they
they're drawing the
Yeah.
pictures?
So is your point that you're trying to teach kindergartners that 16 is 10 plus 6? Is that what we're
It's a
trying?
group with a set of 10 with extra, but they need to somehow communicate it. How would they communicate it?
Without
These
writing an equation?
So recording it somehow, writing it somehow, recording it somehow.
Am I right on the test that we've given to the kindergartners? Don't you remember seeing pictures and then they just write the number below?
Yeah.
Or there's a blank that says tens and there's a blank that says ones, but there's no pluses or equals or anything. There's groups and you say how many tens, they put a 1, how many ones, they put a 6.
But those are two separate quantities then. And the idea with place value is that we put those together for one group.
Yeah, usually.
Which is where I think they
Usually those-
understand, that's where they're building the place value. Because what was happening is, by the time they got to 3rd or 4th grade, these kids had no sense of number. And so we're putting all these additional standards in there to try to help that. And so, yeah, these look a lot different than.
But to me, I don't see it, I see it more as showing place value when you just write 1, 10, and 6 ones. Than when you write it 1, 10 plus 6 ones equals 16. I see that as focusing on the number sentence over there and just totally getting away from what the place value means. I see it just the opposite. When they write 1, 10, and 6 ones, it's just another way of showing 16. It's
But,
not doing
okay, so you
those
have the
things.
16. So somewhere they have the 16. When you were describing a group of 10, a group of 6, those are two separate numbers. Like, how are we putting them together? That's 16. There's this and there's this. And I think that's why when you said the first one, that we could give them the picture or we could give them the number and they create the picture. Either way, they're going to have to model a
Right.
set of 10 and a group of ones. It could be by drawing or equation, is what this is saying.
Right.
It doesn't say everyone has to write an equation, but that is a way to model it,
Yeah.
and that's the next step. So the picture of 10, picture ones, and I think
This is
that
a little bit more intense. Because I don't
even when Aiden was in kindergarten,
They
which
don't
was
see
10
this
years
as-
ago, there was, I mean, they had pictures where they were combining together.
Yeah, we used to start, we'd have the pictures, usually it was a 10, it got to where it was a 10 fairly quickly. And they would write 1, and it would say 10, and then there would be 3, and they'd write their 3, and there'd be a box, and they would write 13.
Exactly.
And then it got to a point where it was given to them as an
Those are
equation.
That's, to me, even what you said earlier wasn't
Late-
an equation,
late here.
if you're setting it up to equal something, you're setting it up and it's equaling something, it's equation.
Right.
It's too early.
So can we highlight that?
I think, cause I think what you're gonna run into is you're gonna have kids that are gonna look at that and they're gonna say, okay, I got 1 10 here, and that's a 1. Then I have 6 ones over here, and that's 6, so now I got 7 instead of 16. Cause they only
Which
have
is
one
not
group of 10,
Right.
so it goes down there on that group of 10.
How do we write it to say what we want?
Maybe we should.
Highlight it, yeah.
Yeah,
That's,
maybe it's like
that's
that.
saying in it.
I'll put it in a different color.
We've used green and yellow so far.
I'm just gonna say, come back to this, on this one.
You can make it pink.
Yeah.
Orange for October.
There you
Make
go.
it orange.
Back to the discussion.
And then we can all say, or.
What if you start out with that, by drawing or equation, put that in front of compose and decompose.
With equations, that'll give me enough information, we'll know what that is.
By drawing or equation, compose and decompose. Unless we can find some better words for decompose.
So are we done with that? Dwayne?
Yeah, I think if we go back to the operations or the algebraic relationship piece that, and we have a title for that one. What is our title on that one? Algebraic
Re-
relationships.
relationships and algebraic thinking is what's on the sheet.
Okay. Because that's gonna be the basis before they even get to that last one that last statement we're talking about anyway. Because they have to make 5.
Okay.
So that wasn't that, okay.
Mhm.
So everything we've done so far is falling under relationships?
Number sense.
Number sense and operations.
That's what I
That's why we
thought.
said it was
I
so
just
big.
said the only-
But for some reason I still have 2 2s. My computer doesn't like what I did, I guess.
I mean, you can pick any of those
Okay.
numbers and then it's.
It's gonna be somebody else's job to clean this up and make it look nice. This is not my handwriting.
Now, right here in the front it says kindergarten students should see addition, subtraction equations, and student writing of equations in kindergarten is encouraged, but it's not required.
Right.
So we have to
Model.
so it's
There is.
careful how we word it in there, so, oh,
Right.
we can test on that.
Right.
It's one test.
I like the drawings need not show details. Of course, everyone, all of my children are very detailed in their pictures of where they're going.
Yes, because you have hats.
Cats and dogs and yes, and the whiskers on the dogs. So what about this, what about this big, cluster heading on understand addition is putting together and adding to, and understand subtraction is taking apart taking from?
I don't have a problem with it. Which one? Let's see, understand, no, that's
Addition is putting together and adding to. So counting on, basically, putting together, combining, and
Right.
adding to. Understand subtraction as taking apart or taking from.
fine. Massachusetts says understand meanings of operations and how they relate to one another. But we would have to then put that information in there somewhere if we didn't have it in the big idea, or whatever that is, I lost track.
Say it again, Myra.
Massachusetts has understand meanings of operations and how they relate to one another. But if we wanted to use that as our big idea, I think we would still need to cover the,
Adding to, and I
Yeah.
think this spells it out because meanings of operations seems abstract.
yeah. I think that what is here is much more easily understood by lay people that don't know the language of operations.
California was simply sort and classify objects.
Yeah, that sounds more like,
And same way with geometry, so it's a simple use objects and draw pictures to find sums and differences of numbers between some
Sums and differences.
keyword is using objects. Compose and decompose numbers into two objects and pictures. Just something we do a lot of.
every one of these says objects and drawings, objects and pictures. Sounds, claps. I still think the big idea though would be that understanding additions, putting together and taking or adding to. And I still think we should keep them together, adding and subtracting together as opposed to, because they're inverse operations of each other, because you can deal with both at the same time.
Say that again, you want them together or not?
I think we should keep them together. Because most of the subtraction that they'll do is really adding on.
Right.
So
Well,
they approach subtraction with what they know from adding.
no, I agree. Research is showing that they learn it best if they learn it together, addition and subtraction. I'm afraid if we split them up, we're going back to the old teach addition by itself, teach subtraction by itself, and they don't make the connection between the two. I think they're doing that with multiplication and division pretty consistently also.
Well, it's like the make five, when you're making five, if you have three, what do you need to make the five? You're
Exactly.
subtracting, but you're adding. You know,
Right.
like there really isn't.
Right. I have three, I want five, how many more do I need?
Right.
Oh, that's weird, I'd forgotten there was a hole over
I
there.
did not either, I just saw it.
What was that? And it's October. Poltergeist.
She like
A gentleman walked by the window, so it looked like he was flying in the air on the sixth floor.
Oh.
I just saw your face.
I know, I was like,
That's
what?
all I saw
Someone
was her
jumping?
face
What did
too.
It's a mess. So,
So the first one, represent addition, subtraction with objects, fingers, mental images, drawings, sounds, acting out situation, verbal explanation, expressions, or equations. Do we wanna say sums and differences instead, represent sums and differences in a variety? I
like
don't know.
sums and differences sounds
I'm
good.
used to the,
Yes.
I think the language of math is important.
Yes, they need to know.
Sums and differences with objects, fingers, mental images, drawings. Do we need all of that?
They need to know it that quick,
know what,
sums and differences. I mean, some of these kids are still,
I think a
Pooping
teacher
in
should
their
be
pants.
using it in the classroom.
Yeah,
not just so
right.
they hear it.
Yeah.
But then you should also come up with other terms at the same time, use that more regularly, but at least let them hear something.
And actually, differences makes more sense than subtract. Subtract is abstract. Difference, I can find the difference between this and that. Sum is kind of out there, but
Difference is
Yeah.
important when you start thinking about comparison. You know, what is the difference between, you know, he has 6 and I have 2. What's the
he
difference
has
between
more and how
those?
much
And that's the
more.
Yeah,
hardest
how
story
much
problem
more.
right there.
It
Because what do
is.
you want me to do with that, those numbers?
Yeah, am
So-
I adding these?
so, so difference can cover everything, right? Right, just like you said, if I have 5 and she has 2, how many more do I have? So you're adding 3 to
And
what
what's the
she has.
difference? It could be
Or you're
just
subtracting
more.
3 from what I have.
Yeah, in
So
that,
it covers both of them.
in that situation,
It can be.
yeah.
That's one
So
of the
is that
hardest
more
ways for them.
confusing or is that less confusing for a 6-year-old?
Well, we wouldn't pose, well, I don't know, they're only gonna subtract from 5 anyway. Bigger.
Make.
But if you,
Yeah.
but if you,
They're
but
only
if you
gonna
pose
make
the,
5.
if you pose a question to a 6-year-old and ask him what the difference between 2 and 5 is, and he wrote down 2 plus 3 is 5, and you were wanting 5 minus 3 is 2.
I was gonna say, we get all kinds of answers of what's the difference between 2 and 5. 5 is harder to write. 2 is more.
But, I mean, I'm just saying, if you teach
Has more
subtraction, he
curve.
does the addition part of it.
But you don't count that wrong. You count you count that line of thinking. See, that's all in the line of interpretation of the teacher. You gotta go back to that. It's not always just, you know. He did think of that. He did go back and think of that fact family, and he did have that higher level thinking skill, and he put that in there. So
We
you
would
gotta
do
give
that
him
when they do it on the test, though.
I give him that line of thinking. I'm sorry. Even on my quarterlies, they gotta put a line of thinking in there, they
Not
just.
even end of the year.
Well, if it's a state, I don't score those tests, so I
I
do, and I do talk to them about that. I reword it throughout the year, if they're giving me that, I have to explain to them, you can put that in there, but maybe go back and rethink what you did, but for this, you know, because,
They've not,
yeah, I don't score the state
in the
test.
past, kindergarten
No.
hasn't had
No.
a state test, it's always been district.
Yeah.
I think that's something that
I don't teach the test, so.
address in kindergarten and maybe even first is, are these items that the teacher is introducing, or is it something that the child is expected to master?
Well, the way we're setting the standard is by the end of that year. What we set as our standard is what we're expecting them to, at the end of kindergarten, to have mastered.
So do we need to worry
So
about that?
sums and differences with objects, fingers, mental images, drawings, acting out situations, we're expecting that by the end of kindergarten.
But then when we talk about the vocabulary words such as sum and difference
Well,
or.
So currently, what it says is representative subtraction, but you had read, and like the Massachusetts or California standard, the standard is for the educator. So, I mean, it doesn't matter to me if we use addition, subtraction, or if we use sums or differences. But I know from my experience with kids, when you say difference, they understand that better than subtract. Like subtract. Like go back. I don't know. So it doesn't matter, I mean, we could just use addition, subtraction.
I mean, I think kindergarten teachers need to be using that language, I just don't think we need to expect the students to master that.
Well, we could put a footnote, that said that, you know, sometimes throughout different standards, it'll say that the students aren't expected to use this language at this level.
I also, I really don't like the language here in Common Core, acting out situations and all of that. I mean, I think it's very deep.
But that is, they sing them, they clap
Right.
them, so, but
Very
we need to
concrete
say
at
that
that
within
age.
the standard.
I mean, I understand that that's what they do, I don't know that that's what the standard needs to say.
I
Right.
agree, I thought
You can just say a
How-
variety of strategies.
But if you leave it open like that, is it even if too open for testing purposes? It always
In
comes
a
back
test,
to
they're
the
not gonna be
No, they're not
singing
going
in
to,
the
but
test.
could you see like a video of the kid like, you know, they have
Jumping
singing.
jacks.
Well,
Like, hey, you know, this computer has a test with the video.
But it is, we would do number sums. And we're on operations and
Like, I like the way, I don't know if somebody's already started side projects, but, you know, is use concrete objects to determine the answers to addition and subtraction problems for two numbers that are each less than 10. I mean, that's,
And I think that's fine for one standard, but they also need to be able to do like the counting, the clapping. We do a lot of singing, and those aren't objects. Those are knowing the number names, the sequence of the names, the quantity of the name. So that's why they put in all those different things. So when you said objects, that would mean something physical, but there's other means that we'll be using too.
That's probably a good way to yeah, where we know that they know without having to go 1, 2, 3. They know the numbers, they're clapping out. You know what I'm saying?
Or Simon
So
that's
says,
probably
or
why that's
Gabe's.
I mean, those are instructional strategies, right? I mean, I think of those as instructional strategies. So essentially what we're saying is solve addition and subtraction problems for two numbers that are each less than 10. I mean, that's what we're wanting to do.
Well, we're getting to a sum of 5, right?
They're actually, well, it depends on what you wanna look at, they're actually exposing them to addition and subtraction within 10. But we're looking at fluency within 5. Which is a whole nother conversation.
So Marilyn, are you thinking, like, number one is they're given the subtraction problem and they're doing something with it? You know, they're putting it into,
They're representing, like.
so they're given the numbers and then they're doing something and representing it.
So
Yeah, this is the
2
pictorial.
plus 3, like, they could do a picture, they could
not
clap it
pictorial.
out, they could step it out, they could.
That's almost addressing the learning style. Whether they're kinesthetic or
It's given a whole lot.
And they're just representing it, they're just representing the situation.
yes, they understand it and their learning style. I mean, that's what I interpret. Because maybe they can't, they're not at the point where they can do it
Right.
abstractly writing a number, but they can clap it out for you because they're a kinesthetic learner.
Where they hold it up and count it as they're holding
Yeah.
it up.
This one here kind of really puts a kind of a finite vision on the one that we just kind of backed off of, that it's more for learning the concept than it is to be able to physically have that two-place number and be able to come up with the equation. Because everything in here is basically saying anything 9 and below, we're staying with all ones. And then the next one is just to introduce that concept right before they're getting ready to leave. It's not I think this one here pretty much points that out.
So it's difficult to write these in the young years because we're working on the same goal at the beginning all the way through the year, but it's just the developing and growing rates. And that same numbers in the space. It's the addition to section, which is in college, the community side, so we're actually, you should see the text version of it, it's not in the sleep.
Says use construct options to determine the answers to addition and subtraction problems for 2 numbers that are each less than 10.
That's what it's on.
California.
Okay, and that's what James just read too.
That's right. I had read that somewhere when you said that.
I'm like, where did I find that? I know I'd seen that.
And I think that is a fine standard, like I think we could use that standard, but I don't think it's the only standard for understanding addition as putting together, adding to, or understanding subtraction as taking apart and taking from. Like I do think we're gonna have to have a few standards kind of that big idea, because it's so foundational.
So do you wanna use the California one for the next one? So we've got them,
I really don't like this represent one that we have. I just,
What about if it's just said represent addition, subtraction with a variety, in a variety of contexts, or in a variety of ways, or with a variety of, or learning, I don't know, modality.
I'm sorry, James, I apologize for being here late, but would you tell me the background of why you don't
well,
want
it seems like a lot of it is just getting into instructional strategies for how you would get students to understand what addition and subtraction are. And rather than a standard of what students are able to do, that's how it feels to me.
So it'd be a way to actually get them to solve the problem.
I kind of, I'll say this, when I first was reading these, I liked this one because it encouraged people to do way more than is in most of the kindergarten textbooks, where there were not very many picture pages, and they were right into what I call naked problems. 2 + 3 = blank. And it was like, it opened it up for, anything you can think of to help kids learn how to add and subtract is okay.
But that's still an instructional strategy. So
Right.
I'm kind of leaning with James on that one. I think that's more of a, and I think it needs to be said for teachers. So I mean, just because I think that should be done. Kids can do that. I don't think it necessary, but I don't know if it's necessarily its own standard.
But the way this standard is stating is that the student represents it that way. So it's not what the teacher's doing, it's what the student's doing. So the student can represent addition, subtraction
And they
by
can.
drawing a picture, clapping, so the student
So they can
is
be able
doing
to
that.
solve it, right? But wouldn't that still be an instructional strategy for me to get them to do it that way so they can do it that way?
You demonstrating
Yeah.
it would be an instructional strategy, but if they turn around and do it themselves, then that's
Okay,
what you're asking.
But even my instructional strategies in my classroom, they're not labeled in the standard, and I get my kids to do it, and they're still representing that particular strategy, even though it's not necessarily labeled in the standard. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, I get where this is coming from, but I'm still struggling. I don't know. Maybe it's just because, I mean,
So what if I'm kind of bouncing back and forth here. What if that use concrete objects didn't say concrete objects? Because California never gets beyond concrete objects. What if it says use a variety of strategies to determine the answers to addition and subtraction problems?
What about a variety of representations?
Representations,
Say it
yeah.
again, use a variety
Use
of
a variety of representations to demonstrate the answers to addition and subtraction problems.
Demonstrate sums and differences.
Find the sums and differences.
Something.
First difference of those.
What do you think of something like that?
I think that's okay, but I don't know that the answer is what's important on this first one. It's more that they see,
Representing.
they're
Right.
able to see what addition and subtraction means and represent that somehow.
Yeah.
Or if you just said use a variety, this is kind of what Aaron was saying, use a variety of strategies to represent addition and subtraction problems.
For the first one.
Right. So we're saying
Should
that,
we say strategies? Use a variety of. That we're representing addition and subtraction problems, so like representation is a different.
Use a variety of strategies to represent.
that's what I said, use a variety of strategies to represent, and the strategies could be,
Well, and
The-
that's
the
what I'm
things that we-
wondering, yeah, I'm just wondering though, if I were the teacher and I read, use a variety of strategies to represent, if I would think of clapping and counting and sing, like,
I
How
think
would
that
we-
could
Could we
be,
put an
Can we-
IE behind it?
yeah, we can put examples in there. And they're just examples. They don't have to be the
Which
ones they have to use.
right.
Kind of
So
how the
there's no
structure
way,
is
like
throughout the
snaps,
school.
I don't see
Yes.
snaps
Yeah.
this year, we snap, and we do fireworks and.
You're looking at
EG.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that statement's too vague or broad, and that it's gonna tell the teacher they have to use multiple strategies to do it, instead of just saying they can use any strategy that they feel or that works for them. Because I know some teachers take it literally. They have to use a variety of strategies. They need to clap, they need to write it, they need to do this, they take it too literally and say you have to do each one of these.
Or some other, or like you could use, or other appropriate,
use an appropriate strategy, or use an appropriate strategy to represent sums and differences.
Or what
What
about
I was gonna
appropriate
say, then are you gonna
strategies?
define appropriate for them, or how do we get into that?
You
Yeah,
gotta know
I
your,
mean,
well, you gotta know your
appropriate
students.
strategy.
That's where you know your students best, but.
but.
That's where a variety of strategies comes in best, is because some kids are gonna handle the clapping and some kids could care less about that and can do it, and it just depends on the child at that point.
Kindergartners love
Could you imagine
Well,
a person
they
writing
love
the
to
test,
crisscross.
when you said variety of strategies? I would think
Well,
that's-
better than what they gave me, what area model for.
I like that. I have no problems with what Clara's written up there now.
What else do I need to say from that? I think we probably do need to get to expressions and equations somewhere.
Yeah, acting out.
Maybe we could
situations.
put a footnote or something on that and say that no single strategy is required over another.
Okay. Let's see, verbal, do you want me to leave acting out? situations?
Kindergartners love to act
This
out.
should be asked for the individual students.
Yes.
Exactly.
Called differentiating instruction.
But we could put an asterisk and then at the end, like a
Yes.
footnote saying, no one strike, just
And let's
depending on
make
the
sure they actually
situation.
read,
Yeah, read the footnotes.
read the footnotes.
Yeah, I don't think many people have, I just found that,
Okay.
second grade, didn't read a footnote, it's like, it says drawings here.
I feel like I'm blocking your view, James.
Oh, no, you're
Move
all right.
here.
The restroom.
Is this a good time you guys take a quick break? It seems like we're getting-
Needing to go to the bathroom.
I'm gonna finish this.
Okay, I'm gonna
Before I forget what I'm doing. Okay, so. What do we wanna say there?
On equations.
Yeah, on our footnote,
On the footnote,
not
how did you word that? Not one, strategy is.
No single strategy should be used over another or
is recommended.
recommend, yeah.
Your professional choice,
Cause we take the
because
word,
it's about, it's like your professional choice is what it is. It comes down to your classroom, it comes down to your kids. And you know them best, regardless of what any principal, any
Or no single strategy is more important
district
than another,
supervisor is gonna tell you.
something like that. I don't know.
This is really what my quarterback is.
You like that for now? It can always be tweaked. I'm gonna leave it in the box so we can see it.
also on that last, or equations,
Yeah,
is it would it possible to put equations on number 2? And just address that by itself?
oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. Although, cause we're not using represent, well, we are using represent, and that is a way to represent.
Let's say we could do.
Sometimes
Okay,
it's
I'm gonna
just
run to the
seeing
restroom.
it, that 3 + 1 is 4. Sometimes
It's
it's,
just gonna be interpreted a lot of different ways.
sometimes just seeing. My kindergarten teacher, teaching for 20 years, so she'll be a good resource. This is good. I have to teach summer school kindergarten, they can help me. Just tell me what you want them to know coming in the fall. And I only got 4 weeks to do it, so you better give me some good stuff.
Well, the kindergarten teacher I visited with said that their building is, they've been told that they need to build a kindergarten with flashcards with equations.
Oh, we haven't been told that. We haven't been told that.
Oh.
Oh, just so appropriate, because it is a letter
What is it?
flashcards.
I've not heard that yet, but I know Lisa's
Meet
got it.
together.
She can't do that yet because I sat outside her room, we got some behavior issues for the kids that she's got with 25 and
11 to 11:20.
and they don't give her
It's like right
information
now.
help.
Yeah.
He sits in there and just screams out crap, 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 crap,
Well,
crap.
and she sent it,
And she's got kids going, hey,
But
she
she
asked
sent it at
10:38.
10:38.
She was, what does
So
it mean
what-
to be red level?
They wanna
I have no
go-
idea.
Are we
Say
just
shout
gonna
out.
go down and
Go
say,
Fifth
No,
grade,
but I do it
I think we're
10-year-olds
looking, we're gonna go back to the fifth grade standards to get them,
And she's
or
like,
they're gonna
it's-
share with
it's,
us their sixth grade standards, I think it's 20.
So she's never gonna get to flashcards, so it doesn't matter.
It was email, it wasn't a text to me, so
Where did this child come from?
we are on our way.
Well, I mean, I had one that he growls so much that he became nodules, they had surgery, because he was hurting his vocal cords. So he just would he just growl. I had another who was just, I think, compulsive thief. I mean, and I caught her, and I said, this is the second time you accomplished it. It's just, oh, more than that.
Well, she's an honest.
Yeah, she's the truth, she's, yeah.
Yeah, so I know, I was sitting out there, cause where my room is now, I mean, it's the, hopefully we're gonna get a preschool next year, but, because they're adding on to my building, so I'm gonna get a brand new room, I have to move at Christmas, but I'm in the hallway with the kindergarten first grade students, even though I'm fifth grade.
It's
We sat out there, yeah, we sat out in the little cove my kid missed 3 days and I was out there testing that for quarterly assessment. And we went to kindergarten stairs, and that kid just sat in there.
Secondary wants to go and meet with us. We just got the emails about fifth grade, so
20 minutes ago.
Yes, 20 minutes ago,
I'm gonna
sorry.
say
That was
before I go, just in case anything bad happens.
That'd be a wonderful technology idea.
Do we need to take anything with this?
Okay,
Okay.
you'll be in here? First floor conference.
We know what we're gonna say.
Say hello. We're gonna say hello.
Well, listen, next you know why? You do what I do. I have to talk to myself at work. And when I heard you, I'm like, oh, I'm not the only one that does that.
Okay, I think I got it saved.
I'm like, yeah, so I'm a visual and an auditory learner. I know that about myself, and so it's like, if I hear it, then there it is.
Okay.
And my mind's going, and then I can hear it like, yeah.
Well, I didn't wanna lose it after all
Yeah.
this. So, oh, nauseous. Okay,
I'm in here, so.
okay. Janet, I wonder if they snagged her on the way or if she's in the bathroom. She was in the bathroom.
Okay, so they go down to the first floor, I don't know where.
Yeah, I know where it is, I don't wanna leave her not knowing where she's going.
Yeah.
So, I'll check in the bathroom before I go.
Okay, all right. And tell her I'm in here if she wants, you know. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna be in here,
And everybody leaves, I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
so I'll be right here.
Oh, I'm okay.
Okay.
K-5?
Yes, they're downstairs meeting with, high school. And so Chris went down, so she could take them until now, just staying
Lunch?
there. Whenever they, yeah. I mean, each time I tell them, 11:45, you need to get down because it gets crowded, so,
They're already down there, so we can time to.
yeah, so they probably break, come back up and get their, hats.
What do you have today?
Everyone, who's not here. Of course, Bridget's not here, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11. The same 11. Let's see, Anne was late. Something was going on, and Marilyn was late. Marilyn got here maybe about 9:15. And I guess she was here. I don't know how to turn it off. And they've been using it. Okay.
Just hit that one, put it on top.
Okay, and then let's see, Anne got here probably about, they went downstairs at 11:10. Anne got here about 10:50. They've not taken a formal break. People have just been policing themselves. We had 2 other observers, an older gentleman and his wife. Mature couple, they didn't, not me, but they're a little older than I am. And real grandparents. I didn't see anything. And so I found some extra chairs from them. And maybe did some nice or something. So it was cute little channel 8 guy moving in around. Really good, but he had this huge tripod. I'm like, oh, okay, Jerry, what you want? And so he didn't do anything. He just set it up in that corner, coming his way. I don't know how to hear the conversation. Conversation was rich though, from time to time, not the entire time, but there were a couple times it was a rich dialogue, agreement between parents and educators. Educators asking parents, well now, why are you thinking that way? Parents asking the same thing. I mean, it was good.
Good.
But again, he was all the way in the corner, so I don't know how he captured that.
They have good cameras.
Okay.
We do not.
It looked heavy, so like he was dragging a lot with him. So then he came and he moved the tripod to this side. I said, okay, well, you get some footage, coming from this end. But then I think he saw you or someone, and then he left out. Yeah, so I was,
They use
but he signed in. I had him sign in too.
they use some of our footage on TV too.
Mm-hmm.
Just cut out little pieces.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's what,
Yeah.
find a sound bite kind of thing.
So, I don't know, I shared with Lori, I said, okay, Lori, this is my last meeting. I said, so you're set up for November, for your November meeting. I said, but whatever meetings you guys decide from there on, then you communicate with Jeremy or, and I told her I would send both of your emails to her. I said, and they were trying, can't guarantee, but they're trying to, I said, but you're gonna have to request that, you can't just assume. I said, so whatever supplies, it's gonna need this, you're not gonna have it. And so she said, oh, okay, then how come you're not here? I said, it's just the time, my time is up now, I just kinda left it that way. And I told her that, between Bridget and Chris, that one of them would be with you, but I don't know.
We're gonna try.
Yeah, and I said, but I don't know which one, yeah, so kind of left things kind of,
Pretty much on their own.
but, she's taking notes right now. Early childhood, who's the only childhood person? I don't remember right now, I have to look at the list, but she's taking notes. So on that piece that came from our office, it's like, well, who's the note taker, who's the lead, so they'll put her name down.
Okay,
That's it.
I'm gonna go check on first floor,
Yeah, that's where they are.
GOV, got a few over there, make sure everybody's
So how are the rest of them going okay?
seem to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
That Stotsky woman is supposed to have a presentation over there at 12, so I don't know if they'll come back or not.
Yeah.
We got the same thing we've had every meeting where
Yeah.
half of them leave, come back angry.
Right, and so I'm sitting here, you know, observing, watching, taking notes, and then once again, I'll open the focal points and I'll say, oh, you know, this kind of, then I'll go back and do something else. So I'm not a loud voice at the table, so it's like, you know, but, and it's funny, every time I've done it with Marilyn, I've done it with Lori, I did it with Leslie, and I can't remember her name right now, but each time I've done that, they're good about it, they just say, and then they go on and they do something else, and then maybe about 2-3 minutes after, you know, they say, you know, let's take a look at this, and then, you know, kind of bring it. Yeah, a real political, yeah, so you know what, then I'm gonna charge out here and say, you need to do this stuff. One of the things that, and maybe it's just my, the way I look at it. Somewhere along the line, somebody's gonna have to crosswalk what they're recommending and what's already there. And they haven't even talked about that, you know, so the way I operate,
Kind of track changes.
yeah, right, it's like in my head, I'm like, okay, well, is anybody gonna there, you know, you don't wanna recreate the wheel, something, you know. There's been no discussion of lake, just in terms of the national landscape, and yeah, there was black hole islands, and there's a train, you know, that kind of thing. There are some things that just kind of keep in mind, but, well, okay, just.
Details, yeah, don't worry about details.
Yeah, it's like I'm
Broad stroke.
just keep my mouth closed and and that'll be the next group, but I keep saying, you're making recommendations, yeah, it works, they did it for the screen, yeah. So you're making recommendations and so. Alright, there's no, competitiveness anymore. Not saying that it's gone, but it's not on the table now. It's not on the table.
Oh, let's know, you got lots of papers.
Yeah, they're looking at Massachusetts.
We got crosswalk,
Yeah.
GLEs, we
You have
Show these
Massachusetts, you have California, you have NCTM, and you have, what was the other one that we using? Someone mentioned another state that was new. And I think that evolved because of the assignments that they had, that they gave themselves last time.
I'll head down there and see if the cameras are working and
Okay.
things are happening.
So we can kind of pick a day or two to meet on the same day. This is where the snow stuff.
Yeah, we need to.
Alright guys, are you fine with coming back at 12:45 and then we'll get started again?
Yes.
Are we gonna start with the reporting piece?
Oh, you mean the report?
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to start with that and then go on, revisit 5th grade. So it's kind of fresh on our mind and try to pick up steam again.
Okay.
Yeah.
For work.
Would that be bad if I do that? Just while we're at lunch, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't sit up on top of
It's
there.
not hot.
Turn it off.
Thanks, Greg.
Shouldn't have closed my computer, so when I do it, logs me out of the internet, I gotta figure out how to get back on.
Oh, okay. You know what, mine just popped up
Did it?
today, yeah, from before.
Well, I have to close out the browser, and I
Oh,
have to open the browser back up.
okay.
So whatever I had open, I lose. And then once I open it back up, it does pop up.
Did Jeremy come down?
Mm-mm.
No?
No.
He came up here, and then he said he was going downstairs, so I just assumed maybe that's.
Yeah, I didn't see him. I don't know, maybe he peeked in and I didn't notice.
Oh, okay.